All right. Today at Solo Porters, we're very excited to have on Dan Wilson of InfoScience. Dan has had a tremendous experience in and around AI and enterprise, having spent over 2 decades in the space and even to more of the senior levels with the global governments. Dan, could you tell us a little bit more about your background and just kind of your journey to this point?
Yeah, shoot. So I'm 47 and I started programming at age 6, 1984. And that led me into, a world of procedural thinking and being a creative and a musician and an artist and someone who's very tactile with building things from scratch. It gave me a lot of perspective on, why we do what we do and what are we really programming for? What are you instructing, right? And so in the year 2000, actually the late 90s, I was really getting into what turned out to be systems theory and number theory. And I made a breakthrough in 2000 that led me to learning Perl, practical extraction and report language, to help sort out that math. And then many things happened that led me to AI in the recent years. But in 2004, I started at a company in Redmond, Washington, as a CTO and digital forensics specialist, working on a lot of different projects and technology for a lot of large companies. And basically, was hired as a hacker and turned into a lot more than that. And I still consult fractionally for a lot of the same people now, and that was 20 something years ago. So I really enjoy what I do. I really enjoy technology and finding meaning into what we're doing, not just trying to force fit some hype, because that's what's happening right now a lot of times. But so in 2017, I really got into machine learning with financial trading. So automated trading on, let's say, Coinbase. I was trading Litecoin because it was a pretty good, they charge you
There's some
per
nice spreads there.
it's a good spreads. I trained and it was just using a dinky laptop, and I trained it on open source software and on 2.5, 3 months of history for Bitcoin, what had happened, right? And then was able to tune it and do a bunch of simulations and paper trading until finally I gave it half a grand and went to work and came home and it made me $80 on one trade. This is while Bitcoin was on its way down. Okay, which was very challenging. It wasn't like a real nice, bullish thing. It was definitely, bearing out. So I learned a lot from that. And then furthermore, in being a forensic specialist in a multitude of ways, graphics and video and things like that have always been important, and analyzing that and, using my skills at every level to troubleshoot things. And so I got into machine learning kind of odd because there was the owner of the company I worked for, his brother had a really bad break-in. Someone actually just cracked the code to the key box at their townhouse and was able to go in and steal about 40 grand of jewelry.
Wow.
And so they were like, "Oh, we know one person who could, do this." And they were right. So they sent me the crime footage, and I said to myself, there's no real straightforward way of doing this with video that I know of, but I know of like, stuff like Photo Acute and software that lets you stitch together lots of photos of the same thing in different places to form a higher resolution image. So I looked around and I found Drizzle and Drizzle Pack by NASA. And that's for, enhancing and refining the view of bodies that are in space while they have a dynamically shifting background. So to prep those images, you have to use machine learning and back propagation and things like that to really define where things are going, right? It wasn't automated, and it still isn't, and you can still use the software today. And so I taught myself how to use this in a few hours, produced results, and by that day or by the next day, I had a copy in the morning to deliver to the police. It made the news that week, and within 2 weeks, they caught the criminal and that footage helped, right? So, I have all these fun projects leading me through this, right? And AI is something, and we've all been familiar with in games, right? Like, oh, the AI, the computer, the bot, whatever, and it has a certain amount of simulated intelligence, and we know that because it can get in corners and stuff and do stupid things, but never was the generative AI, right? It was always procedurally bound, most likely. And when that happened, it really gave me the capabilities I was looking for that I lacked it with Perl. And it wasn't just Python, but it was like essentially it was AI assisted coding and analysis that helped me uncover a lot of the theory that I was working with years ago. And now I'm working on it with a team of people for a myriad of reasons. And I am very fortunate to have that team. So I have all of these personal reasons to be enthusiastic and involved in the technology. And because I build from the ground up and I like to use minimal hardware, because hey, budgets, right? But you really learn what you can do at the edge, and you really learn how to secure things because it's less complex and simple. I mean, the cloud is a leaky bucket. Okay. Look at what happened to Amazon, this week and stuff. Beyond those kind of foul ups, which are rare, but still it's possible. There's just a lot of trust, right? And so I go with a zero trust approach with technology, just like you would in cybersecurity. And, I'm also work in cybersecurity, and I do forensics and AI. I work with assurers, and I assure myself. And then it's a whole soup of related concerns, right? No matter where you're at. You say, yeah, it's just data. But, with document poisoning, MCP poisoning, and other types of attack surfaces beyond standard social engineering, it's a bonanza for, hackers. So when I look at everything going on right now, and lately the speech I've been giving people, the narrative I drive is like, look, I love innovation and I love all this stuff. And I love the playground for that. But the problem is here's a building that's the business, right? This big building. Here's a playground, loose ends, whatever, but very rigid over here. We can't mix the two like that. It needs to qualify and graduate. Leading up to last year, a lot of the time we spent was what's possible with AI, generative AI, what's possible. And we saw everybody leapfrogging each other until finally DeepSeek said mathematical optimization is really where it's at. Truly using what you have differently and more effectively is where it's at. Okay. And this goes down to intelligence and decision making. Okay. And the rules that we use to guide our return on investment and what it takes to gauge those metrics, to measure and manage and map all those. So now I help people gauge their products and projects on the governance that, at least for North America, is the NIST AI risk management framework. So the AI RMF is what we call it. And it falls in step and was developed in step with the ISO 42001 standard, which is, in Europe very heavily used. But in America, the AI RMF is a suggestion, right? So it's like the Wild West here. It's incredibly crazy, and I'll slip in my perspectives here for like the international end of things. I was asked to participate in Malaysia's National AI Office working groups, and I chose AI sovereignty because I'd spent a year doing this. And AI and data sovereignty is really just, it's security first. What makes that happen. Your policies are meaningless if you can't back it up with action,
Right.
and that's the thing. It doesn't matter. It's great. It's just you're talking to the wind. So, but good practices are good practices. And so you can use the NIST and largely be in step with, that standard out there. It's free to get that information as well. Right now, the site is down for obvious reasons. Thank you, government. But anyways, so I have this perspective that is very practical, based on experience and passion, based on being a CTO and really a CIO for so many years. And I write for Information Week and Data Science Central, and I participate in many, many things. And I have my own think tank, and I just do a lot academically. Okay. More academically, probably, than anything else this week. But education's important, and people, they get the right terminology, which is not all the jargon and stuff out there and a million acronyms, right? Life is easier and you can put things into business terms. So there's another barrier. Okay. In the world out there, no matter what, be it AI or not. Okay. Because there's just a lot, you could say, oh, memorize everything that's like Salesforce or like, this, that, and the other. Oh, Tableau, Airtable, like eventually it all stacks up and makes sense. But like, you could just be writing exactly what you need for what it's worth and being more effective. And the beauty of cloud products and MSPs that provide these types of solutions, I'm not going to go into names because they're all great. There's so many great ones I've tested, but they'll help you prototype what your ideas are and get it going without your own infrastructure. But then you've got this leaky bucket, right? Also, is that secure? Is that in alignment with your policies, data retention, customer data? Are you trusting of this vendor? Okay. So again, you look at the news this year has been really scary. Last year it was just, oh my God. This year is embarrassing too, though, because what should be an AI problem somewhere ends up being just a cybersecurity mistake that's pretty greenhorn. Like Walmart, they have this bot. It's involved in all the hiring. Is it Walmart or Wendy's? One of the W's. Anyway, involved in all the hiring for this company, and it takes in user information, user data, like, sensitive information, personal identifiable information. And then, but the company, I'm not going to name them, is an AI company that implemented this whole thing. It wasn't an AI mistake. They just used admin 1234 for their credentials for some server that happened to have all this on there. Right. So it's just, look, I'm not saying that it reflects on the whole company, but what happens is you've got all these people rushing to, and hype is what it is, but you have a lot of people who are capable rushing in too. And I'm not saying they're fools for being fast, but I'm saying it's foolish not to like exercise due diligence and cover your bases. Someone else's policy is not going to protect you later if something changes. Out like in Malaysia, the reliance on Western companies is what we were getting away from and creating sovereignty down to the hardware manufacturing inside the borders of that country, not just a locale, right? And if you wanted to form an alliance or a co-op with someone else, they need to be as secure as you. Or if you have any interchange with them, your data is at risk, right? I had a friend who worked at a company in the UK, and they were really had like high profile clients and stuff, and they worked with this other vendor. They pretty much, I guess you only have so many choices out there, but whatever, for what it's worth, their clients' data got breached through a vendor they used. And so they needed scorecards for cybersecurity health for all these people. And then like a new paradigm of thinking. It's like really it's just due diligence. It's just
Sure.
don't forget to measure and map, and to provide governance, you've got to do some things. But it's a very small handful of things. That's the beauty of it. But with all the hype out there and all the jargon, it's just like, oh, this and that. It's all the same animal under a different skin a lot of times, it's just for different sectors and stuff. But so, I don't want to ramble too hard here. I know you got me here to ramble, right?
No, but this
But
is
I
perfect.
want to stay on point. So we talk a lot about what are the barriers to adoption? What are the problems with adoption? And I have funny rhetoric on this. Okay. And I even came up with it today. I thought it was funny. It's like adoption, like, well, okay, some child no one wants. Yeah, I don't want to adopt anything. All right. I want to like foster growth. I want to implement a technology. I want to utilize a tool. I don't want to like it's the phrasing of it. And I'm not trying to, be silly with words here, but it's kind of odd because what I'm illustrating is a lack of direction with the hype wave. It's like, oh, screaming in all directions. You can
Sure.
use it in many places that even all the big players are squeezing it into freaking notepad. Notepad. The last bastion of sanity in this world has become AI. I'm not going to say it, but it's not as good anymore because of that. It's a risk. It's a higher process. Like it's more overhead, whatever. It may not be active until you use it, but it's still integrated, right? And so there's a touch point. There's an attack surface. I specialize in breaching all the systems that you think are secure. And I educate people who are educated already, who have masters, things like that. For AI, it's a different game. It calls coming from inside the house. You have so many possibilities. You can have an AI silently case certain things. You can make them do this with prompting, with poison injections. Like, look, everybody, if you're trying to hire an AI specialist and you get a document that has extra text on it and they're taking advantage of white text and they're like poisoning the document and showing off their skills, give them a chance. They're the people you need. You need to hire the Kevin Nitnicks out there. You need to hire all the people who can break your system. They know better, and they know probably a way to do it for almost free and to protect it. So, and I spent time right in front of the CISOs of was it OpenAI, Meta, Anthropic, AWS here this year at San Francisco's RSA convention, and they had some pretty good schemes cooked up, and they showed you a lot, but there's still so much to question. It wasn't like they could just give you a solid answer as to what's the most secure way to do it. And all of this falls back on the transformer architecture. All these surrounding systems would be plenty good. And there's so many right ways to do it. But in this case, because again, the call is coming from inside the house and it's the way the transformer works, it has too many attack surfaces inside of itself. You really have to narrow the scope. Okay, because AI is general, it's focused out. It's like a fan. Okay, just imagine a fan opened up or like 180 degrees, right? Like a protractor, right? You've got to narrow the scope of usage to get real business reliable procedural results and use it in the most sandboxed of ways and do that where it would save you, and I have some good things to preach about with that, the positive of it. But the hype wave is real. I have a friend of mine who calls himself the hype exorcist. Okay. He's got a show with Tim O'Reilly of O'Reilly Bookshelf. They're great. Anyway, but I'm in from that camp too, right? Again, I love the playground, but I want business to work. And the
Right.
moment we start adopting things ahead of time. So we're looking at things like design cues. Like car companies back in the day would look, oh, side mirrors, this and that, slightly more aerodynamic design cues that you see across the room from you, right? And that's fine. That's how industry grows, But there's this cue of adoption that's going on. There's that word again, right? And it's broad. Like, what is this? What is this? I have no idea. No. So you need to refine context, right? A lot of people lack the cases for their business or use cases, or there's no clear path to implement. There's so many options. What's the right answer? And then you've got people shaking the stick on one end, like there's that 95% report that MIT put out a month or two ago. It was like 95% are of AI pilots are probable to fail. And it was like, no, no, no. Even and it was very well not interpreted right, and they could have done a better job titling it. So that's the consensus. A whole bunch of people jumped on that bandwagon and said, hire us because we'll prevent that. Riding that hype wave, right? The
Sure.
negative hype wave. I mean, a year and a half ago, I used to joke with my MIT cohorts about how now that I know what I know, people are going to pay me to get them to not use AI in some cases.
That's
So
right. Right.
anyway, so okay, we have the receptiveness and the hype, right? So I'm gonna like three top reasons, but they're in step with other three reasons too. So, get the adoption word out of the way. But the receptiveness and the hype is like a lot of companies are like, this is a mess. I'd love to use some people are like, I'd love to use it, but there's no unified way of doing it, right? And a lot of this leads to the second thing, which is culture. So company culture and technical acumen. Okay. A business that does, let's say, sales on a product they never see, but it's all sales related, they'll use business technology and stuff, right? Heck, you could have a factory that produces a product, but the most technologically advanced people are actually in the office using business software, right? I'm not kidding you. I've been in all these light manufacturing situations and I've seen it. So it doesn't matter if a company is a technology company, like, hey, we make hardware, or hey, we are a SaaS company, or hey, we provide this or that, or like any company could take advantage of AI for business, but it's different to utilize it for your particular cases because that's where things like machine learning and neural network come into play. That's where like fine tuning a model for your use case might come into play. All right. And there's a lot of arguments around and against that in some situations. It's just not needed. Okay. I'm here to help people figure out where to use it locally on your own hardware in a sovereign and secure way, and when you're going to have to bridge that to the cloud, or if you have to use a cloud product, why you should do that versus trying to keep up with any trends on your development team for something. Because if something's rapidly evolving, your sales team needs certain business intelligence, there's a way to bridge that need from an outside service to your own corpus of sensitive data. And
Sure.
so again, there's that trust level with the company you're working with, the MSP, right? Whoever's doing it. So even if you suss them out, everybody's bound to make a mistake somewhere, but you can't live life like that. You'll never get anywhere, right? So anyway, the culture is something weird because if a company doesn't promote people to explore it so we can figure out what we could do with it, it's very basic kumbaya type of come to the water thing. It's really easy for any company to do. It can be more ready. Okay. I have a maturity index, and this is like kind of the third part. It kind of revolves around the maturity of a company, right? But the maturity index is something I put this together for cyber intel training, which is also where I instruct and help lead some things. So you have like 5 levels of maturity for a company, okay? And so one is, and this is about AI, not the company's overall maturity, but aware. The organization has a basic awareness that AI is in use or planned, but no formal risk governance in place. All right. 2, reactive. AI risks are addressed only when problems arise, no inventory or roles defined. 3, managed. AI systems are inventoried and basic governance rules exist. Some risk processes are implemented. 4, integrated. AI risk management is aligned with cyber and business planning. PCF and risk management framework. PCF is a practical cyber framework we use there, and risk management framework together with assessments. But then 5 is trust driven. That's what you want, is a trust driven environment. So that's when AI governance is proactive, measurable, tied to trust, equity, and compliance outcomes, communicated to stakeholders. Okay. I'm here to make that easy. All right. And this is what I do for people, is dispel all these myths. So all you got to do is imagine a decision tree on a sheet of paper. And this imaginary decision tree, which actually is a real document that goes like a page and a little part of a page, is something I put together with some people at MIT, great people. And what it is a question and an answer and a split and what you should do and an exit point. Hey, is your data sensitive in any way, shape, or form, or have any of this, that, or the other in it? No? Cool. You can use a non-sovereign AI anywhere you want, any API, any app, right? But as you go down, all of a sudden you're dealing with customer logins and financials. Oh, all of a sudden now it's healthcare. It's SOC2, Security Operations Center 2, right? Or HIPAA or GDPR. You have all these things, and a lot of it's a nightmare, right? Where
Sure.
these are like our grasping at straws moment as humanity, try to make sense of what's going on, and everything's advancing faster than one person can keep up with.
It
And
starts
there's
to underscore your cloud component.
what's that?
It starts to underscore your cloud preference.
Absolutely, and it gets out of hand quick. And so maturity comes with you don't just earn maturity, you create it too. Because a young company can be quite mature. Okay. Okay. So let's do this. Another type of maturity would be readiness to adopt based on data readiness and
How do
use
people
case.
define that?
Okay. So if you have okay, so there's a company that wants to integrate AI. They're looking to discover possible use cases for AI in their company. Okay. And they bring me in, and they've been around for 20 years. Okay. That means hopefully they have a lot of data to go on, market analysis, sales, how good they did, all these things, times of years, trends, you know, things that you can kind of calculate like an almanac, perhaps. You've got that much time. You can look at cycles in a different way and kind of compare that to like bigger market events and, world affairs. All right. But along with that, if you have that other data, you can look at other trends and growth and analyze and use that historical data to your advantage for long term projection. I follow Bill Kennedy's 80/20, the 80/20 CEO. I'm friends with Bill. Bill's amazing. And he says if 20% of your decisions are based on data that you have, you don't have enough data and you need to do a better job of getting that and analyzing things. If 80% of your decisions could be based on information that you've collected, you have a backlog. 60% is about the sweet spot. Funny enough, when it comes to systems and projects, I have a good friend that backs this up too. He like upgraded all the passport systems for the government in the 80s, and that was difficult. Right? Cool. But he says when it comes to a new project, you only need to be about 60% accurate with all of your projections, because as you engage a system, it changes. You would be chasing your tail to think, you got what it takes to get beyond that, because it's nature's way. Okay, let's just say that. It's a very profound ratio in nature in this. Now, I like to apply nature's principles to common sense business logic in a framework that makes sense to explain AI and technical risks. If you start with governance, you have your decision tree, you have your foundation. You're building the bottom of this pyramid. We're just going to call it that, or a house, whatever, right? But in order for this to work, you must follow that through all the steps quite empirically, right? But the beauty is you can sleep good at night knowing that you have a framework to use. Now you say, wow, that's a lot of reading. I'm not a specialist, Dan. Well, that's cool. I'm here to make that easy too. The risk management framework for AI is set up for govern. Okay, so it's a big circle for govern. That's an activity you take. And there's a bunch of listings under govern, like 1.1, 1.2, but it's not a lot. It's really short. So it comes down to govern, which has a lot of subcategories under it, but it's not very long. And then you have measure, manage, and map. Okay. And so it's like this triangle with govern in the middle. And every time you're going to make a decision, in whatever you have, it maps to that. It'll tell you what you need. I have a bot that I built that has the AI RMF into it. And then I can put the details of a particular case into it. And it provides me with that remediation in a very clear path, very step by step, you know, way. And it's in step with other frameworks as well. And so if you do this, you can know without being a technician or a developer of any sort and help navigate your business through these uncertain waters. And soon enough, you'll realize you were standing in the wrong place of the boat to see the waters. And then you'll soon realize that you can see where not to go. And
Sure.
soon you'll realize where the ROI could truly come from. Okay. So if you can get over that fear of again, adoption and what have you, but the barrier to entry is uncertainty, a path, we've never done this before. It's not just our first time. Even a software company is doing something with AI for the first time. It's like everybody's kind of, we're all students again, man. That's how I look at it. We're all students. And if you're not, it doesn't affect you, or you've got good managers. I don't know, whatever, handlers. Anyway, so that's that. And so I like to start with governance, and it makes all the other routes easy. Hey, we want to implement AI in our business. And I say, cool, let's focus on just business. All right. Because there is low hanging fruit, perhaps. All right. And I'm not talking about automating away roles from humans. I am against that. I am into like, oh, you have a 5-person team. Now you have a 50-person team, because
Right.
all 5 of them are stewards for the AI, and they're managing context instead of just prompts, and they're understanding the data, like a data scientist is going to create algorithms and machine learning models, perhaps, and other things to help use the data and like set up schemes for things. And it's a lot more than that. Okay. A lot of probability and statistics are involved, a lot of other math. But then a data engineer is going to create those pipelines that are defined, whose needs are defined by those algorithms. And once that pipeline of information is data laked in, right? A company gets ready for their data, like you were asking, how would you be ready? Um, is you start to structure it. There's a counter argument going on right now that I love, which is we need to make AI more ready for our data, not the other way around, right? We're getting there. But I would be remiss to say we're close enough, right? So what you want to do is have well labeled data, like, hey, it's a database, or hey, it's a spreadsheet, name, number, address. Here's this customer's sales for XYZ, whatever sales and business data you want, business intelligence, right? So for a company to be ready, there's software maturity and things like, oh, we already have a system for that. We use this, that, and the other. Okay, cool. Well, if you have a governance plan in place based on the information that's going to be interchanged, it'll help you pick a provider. And so when you talk to a list of providers, or heck, go on ChatGPT and say, look up, I need this, and here's my needs. Let's find some people that can do like this, right? And you can do that, right? Wow, I'm really selling out myself here. I'm replacing myself with my own advice. But honestly, you can do a little bit of footwork to help you gauge the waters and go, well, I need to make a road trip. My car's this big. I have this budget, but I really don't know the terrain. I really don't know how far away it is because I could see the point, but there's a lot of dips in the terrain. That's what it's like. I feel like waves in a boat are like that, right? And so a sensible navigator must have a compass. They must have a clear view. And when they don't, it's imprudent to make decisions, right? I'm not here to preach about using AI. I'm here to preach against using AI like for the hype's sake and all this. So let's say you've got a big database, or let's say you're using, you already have people using Tableau and business intelligence. Your data is really available. How you get that and use it and integrate with it needs to be careful. Are you using API calls that send it out the doors? Do you already have an on-premises solution where your local servers are there, and it's really anyone could work on a PostgreSQL database like in real life? You can find people for this everywhere, and it's very high integrity. It's great. You can add a PVEC plugin to it to actually make it a vector store, and you can do other things with it. Okay, and this is rock solid stuff. And well, nothing's perfect out there. It's some of the most trusted, and I use a myriad of things, but I always suggest using open source because you can explain what's going on. And if you keep it on premises and you're not connecting to it a certain way, you're going to be okay. The moment you start getting AI involved, there is some interchange and worry for tools out there. It might be poisoned or bring something into your system. You bring something in, you invite the vampire in, right?
Sure,
So to speak.
sure.
There's nothing you can do. And if something gets triggered eventually, or that silent case comes out somewhere, it could lead to something. If anything, it could cause havoc. But I'm not saying I haven't seen too much malicious stuff out there. It's usually very targeted for money. Anyways, so I'll bring my notes up here again. So a clear path and use case disparity can keep a lot of people out. The curve of implementation is such that, well, how do we know how much we're going to pay for it? So even if you had all the numbers, all right, and you said, well, we have this data, we would like to automatically process it and create reports using AI to help. Okay. And we're going to do so with our company's data with actual clients and everything, because we're going to use it later in real process. But if we weren't, we could sanitize it and we could anonymize it, right? And use it on some API where, yeah, the numbers are real, but the people's addresses and names have been changed, right? So there's no
Right.
PII, all right? You're using an API properly. Now, if something happens to that company, that MSP, the managed service provider, whoever it is, be it a database or an AI company, if something happens to them, you don't have to worry about your clients, right?
Sure.
Using governance first mentality, it's as simple as putting on your shoes and making sure you have your wallet and your keys before you walk out a locked door. Okay. And don't track mud on your shoes when you come in. And now these are rough analogies, man, but everyday living is who we all are every day. Forget the
Mm.
technical terms. Okay. This is watching your back. So, you can be street smart. Every device connected to the internet is a back alley waiting to happen for you to get mugged. You know what I mean? Your credentials, all kind of stuff, and it's only getting more realistic as generative AI improves, right? But good sensibility will keep you out of a lot of doors of compromise if you just are observant. But if the hype is overwhelming, you're not going to see, what's over a crest. You're not going to be in the right position. You won't have the vantage point that you truly deserve. Okay. And so you could clear the path by defining your own maturity level. What could my company, forget about AI, man. What are the pain points in your company? What are the pain points between your offices? Where is the biggest lag of time? Like standard metering and measuring in business sense, writing that down with a pencil and paper will get you more ready than any wave of hype will ever push you to adopt. Once you have that in place and you can go, oh, well, I'm using this software and that software. Well, what are their policies? And you go and you find that out with some quick searches, automate that. I do a fair amount of reporting, and I think that a lot of businesses could, really benefit from that. Automated emails are one thing. Let's look at the facts. Software allows automation. AI isn't really anything new other than the sentiment analysis, able to determine and adapt and like understand what people are saying, down to a scanned handwritten note, like OCR, optical character recognition, all these things. It's quite capable. But the moment it starts to lose context, things get a little wacky. And anybody else would have to take notes if they were in a long conversation too. So it's very human too. But if you hired a human and they were nearly infallible, then let's say they never got sick, were never hungover, were always on time and understood the process, there are going to be exceptions that happen. And they are a gatekeeper and a point of error correction in that system. And so there are things that we're going to reach the limit of where AI or humans can't do, and we're going to find, that we're on equal ground. But for what it's worth, if you're going to automate something, it has to be rock solid. So an email campaign is easy. Media automation, we've been automating campaigns and things. That's not the same. But
Sure.
when it comes to a thoughtful interchange between two people, look, I don't really like the AI canned messages on LinkedIn. I don't. Even if it's something I'm interested in, I'm like, you don't know what I'm building and you have no idea what I do, or you wouldn't be asking me, you'd be having a different conversation with me because I build partnerships, but you're over here selling AI to an AI company. So
Right.
I'll say I could do that too, but how are you doing today? It's like be friendly, engage. Who cares? Your style of communication was way more meaningful than, like that's why people choose you, if you can get them, right? So you bridge the gap between hype, getting through that, defining your own needs and finding low-hanging fruit. And then once you get through like what's really a problem right now, then you take a step in and go, okay, we're a little more mature now. So how could we use AI to do something more? What would make us more capable? And you could say, oh, we always do this thing every month. And if we could just shorten the amount of time, it's like grunt work. Basically, take out the grunt work that makes people hate their lives. So you retain your talent, allow them to manage that and be stewards of these agentic systems. Allow people to utilize and define their workflows to you and help with your IT and your governance team or whatever you've got, or hire me, hire you, hire a fractional, assurance advisor. I work with one of the only companies that's actually qualified and endorsed by the Department of Homeland Security for forensic auditing. So I take a cybersecurity first approach to all this technology. The hype is just what it is, whatever. Could be a new music genre. There's a hype wave with that. Could be a new food. I remember when people were putting coffee grinds on steak back in the early 2000s. I was like, why are you doing that? And they don't do it anymore. Anyway, so don't believe the hype. So in avoiding the hype, we have our three top reasons that really, underscore why you need to look into your processes and your business first and not just what everyone else is doing. Because these things will affect everybody, but certain things will only really affect your environment and your architecture. So a shortage of AI skilled talent and expertise is a big problem out there. A label isn't a skill, and there are a lot of people out there came out of the woodwork being AI specialists and all these things over the years. And like, I eventually adopted, oh my God, I adopted it, right? But I upskilled into it for my own personal reasons and wasn't really trying to profit on it. I was just like, oh, this is really getting me somewhere. It's moving the needle for me. I was just an end user, when it really happened to me in the last few years. And I got deep into memory research and neuromorphic systems and things like that. With a shortage of the skilled people who can really guide you through the governance process, what it takes, understanding hardware, understanding the ins and outs of the software stack and those caveats, like it's tough because it's not just that things are changing rapidly, but there's just a lot of unqualified people only really focusing on the AI factor, not the tech overall factor and business really first. Data privacy and security concerns are another major, hurdle for implementation. And that's why a lot of people don't want to approach it. And then finally, it's the costs of doing it, right? So for people like you and myself who help guide others through these processes, and I know you've probably seen a lot, which is, you want to dispel the myths and let people know what's really possible. Because if you're a developer or you work close to the technology, it's great, but you know how much work it takes to make something happen and then polish that and then say, wow, is this scalable? There's so many things to consider, right? Just because you can make it work on a small use case doesn't mean it's scalable for the whole company, right?
Right.
So even at a minimum, individual workers can adopt, like, you could buy for your company at $25 a seat business chat GPT. And they actually do have a lot of privacy features in there, and multi-factor and a few other things and company knowledge base. It's really cool. But that's in the individual use. That's not a real company-wide, implementation of it, a transformation, if you will. Well, the thing is that we have this trend of, and the worry of, the high costs of the cloud have is just as much to do with security as they do money. Okay. And that's tough. You get the triangle of value. It's like you get some high quality, cheap, fast, and quality. You can only
Right.
pick two, right? I work with companies that have somehow managed to achieve all three. And when I say that, we're the people building the backbone of this. Okay. And I'm a part of a lot more than I'll go to here, but I work with a lot of people who are in OEM manufacturing deals and who are the creators of data centers and in ways that are way more green than what we're hearing. So I'll address two concerns in this. In latest news, there are a lot of data centers that are being protested. It's a heinous act of resource grab. It's insane that we allow small towns to be overcharged on their own electricity, or taps running dry. No joke. This is happening right now because some data center moved in. And they don't have the economy for that. And they shouldn't have to. And so it's a matter of policy, right? But beyond policy, you've got the water not running. Hey, 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 we've got to redo our thinking, right? So I work with companies like Swissfault and Kaiser, Kaisair. Look that up. They're in partnership together. And what they do is so incredible for not only creating a green step in the right direction, but for recycling it as well. Swissvault creates hardware that's meant to disassemble and recycle. It's also it's low heat. It doesn't use as much power. It's a whole order of magnitude of power lower. We're running inference instead of GPUs. We could farm GPUs on the side and pull that, but so we have high resiliency storage around the world with high availability. It's sped up through its resilience. And then through the data centers that combine all of this and ship it prefab by a truck and a crane. And then your build out's quick and scalable, and you can put it in different regions of the world, and it all works very fast. On-prem solutions can be costly at first, but really pay for themselves with the right kind of staff. And it doesn't even take a large staff in some cases. Just someone to hook that up and someone remote to manage it. And, hopefully no one unplugs anything, right? But there's a fair amount of work to get there, but it's so much easier than it used to be. And so a good friend of mine at Swissfault helped build all of the network nodes for Prodigy, AOL, and CompuServe back in the 90s and understands telecom. And so I work with a lot of people who build infrastructure from, solar power, satellite, their data centers, undersea cables, things like that. And we get together and we're like, well, what's the best way? Right? Because we all obviously know what has worked, but where the shortcomings are. So for your company, and I'll get back down to earth. Sorry, everybody. But for your company, I mean, you might find an on-prem hybrid approach is great, but you're going to need a specialist like you or myself or anyone else out there that really has what it takes to provide the assurance and those steps to help manage, map, govern, and really do something incredible with your data that's going to drive the needle, for you. So if you want the low-hanging fruit, there's an easy way to do it right, but you need to be very clear about the steps you're taking. So don't do it alone. I'm going to do surgery on my foot. Great. You got the hands, you could bend over and do it, and maybe you could take the pain or whatever, but you should probably talk to at least a doctor or somebody before you go doing that on your own. Okay. And so make sure you talk to somebody, get an opinion and see and suss that out. Your cost analysis gets tricky when you can't get clear answers from managed service providers, or good policies. So just make sure you play with the right people too. Don't waste your time and go for groups that actually do put that first. Don't find people talking about security last. Find people that understand the value of that. Hey, and if you are a consultant or you are a chief AI officer at your company, you know that having good governance to fall back on that's very easy to implement, like the AI RMF I was talking about earlier, it just makes it a very welcoming experience to engage uncertainty. You there's so much to look at and so many moving parts. But if you can minimize all the hype and all the confusion, you can see what you have, assess that, and go, yeah, well, this is slower here, and it's because it takes a long time for this, or a human has to do a bunch of grunt work. Now we just see steps in the procedure and process where things are slower than they could be. And to measure and map, help you define these things. That's what you need the specialist for at some point in your company or whatever. If you're a mature company, you need to get a specialist in house, or at least the full time equivalent. What was that?
I was just going to ask you what is kind of the general profile of organizations or governments that typically tap the shoulders of your team at InfoScience?
Healthcare, forensics, memory management, light manufacturing, VC firms with healthcare and biotech. I turn a lot of stuff down that's weapons related, do a lot of helping people and protect people. And I just, it's like you can't get all the business, but you can get some of the best and some of the most rational. So it's just, if someone's not willing to hear you out in the very beginning, don't work with them, no matter how much they're offering to pay you. Just say no. Start with no, and learn until you feel like, yeah, I could, it's worth a 30-minute discovery call. I'll talk to you for free for 30 minutes and see what's going on. And are you willing to do these things? Are these the kind of terms you're willing to agree to? Okay, cool. Well, we can work together. Otherwise, I am not going to make promises that you can't do your part to do. Also, what we do at Cyber Intel Training, one of the things we do is help companies understand who's in charge of what and who's responsible for what activity or what value or what asset, and how it could be at risk, and what would happen if that went down, and how to implement that across all of your devices and applications and identities and more. Okay. And so, again, security first, governance first makes that decision tree a lot more clear. All of a sudden, you've defined the needs. Just understand your data a little bit. Go, well, is this, sensitive data, and in what way is it? Is it SOC2, SOC1? Is this something I would never want to share outside of that even? So it's critical infrastructure, so it's government, through all these things. In France, I think we were talking about this off camera, but like in France, they have the cloud de confiance, and it's a cybersecurity seal of approval. It's a cybersecurity level that's very high. And if you are in government or critical infrastructure using AI software or particular data software, and handling this sensitive information, it must have the stamp on it. It must have the cloud de confiance seal of approval. And that's actually really stringent. And when I was, working in the working groups in Malaysia, I was leading the research for France, United States, and the UK. And it ended up being that France was ahead of the US on several fronts. And I was very surprised. It shocked the whole group, which again was a group of people who worked on actual infrastructure, not just policy and who knows what. No armchair people, all doers, right? All builders and creators. And they know what's at risk. And so, in watching everybody's attitudes change at that point, and then 2 months later, people from France and their cybersecurity came over, and AI and cybersecurity in France, and all of this came together with policies from Malaysia. Malaysia's developing their own version of that. And a lot of the talks that I gave at all of our work group meetings for everybody that was presented were about like how to play right with your neighbors and how to make sure you can shake hands, but my hands are muddy, right? How to build that kind of conglomerate in a way that's sane and measurable, something you can map and measure, all the M's, those three M's. Beyond that, something that you can enforce, because what good is an agreement? It's actually not any good at all, as it turns out. No paperwork's going to stop anything really. No law is going to stop someone from speeding. I have in real life seen way too many instances of near death to know and realize that like you can't trust people to read a one-way sign. That's the kit and caboodle. Like, figure out where you can save the money and the security risk at the same time. A cloud risk is a leaky bucket, so it's a risk for your budget. It's just not that great, and a risk for your security budget. You would actually have to spend less on security if it was on-prem, and you'd have better data availability. No ingress and outbound fees for all this data interchange. It's faster. You want your compute next to your data anyway, but again, there are going to be cases where you need the cloud, and that's totally cool. I want people to keep their partnerships with people. You know what I mean? But if you like someone, then you should petition for them to change the security policy or whatever for you. And if they can't do that, then they're not going to be able to do that for a lot of other people, and you shouldn't stick around to find out the hard way. Okay? Don't wait for promises to fall apart. Just make sure people have definable steps along the way to ensure that.
To go into that point a little bit more, what would be kind of like a good framework if you're a manager that's hearing about InfoScience or just AI security and governance in general? What's the right positioning, particularly for middle managers, to open the door to have a group like yourselves come in and
Uh,
just talk? How do you pitch that to where it's like a you're not disqualifying the current management, but more so enabling them?
we're there to help. It's like it's almost like AI is this weird ghost and you're calling the Ghostbusters. And it's just this really weird, dumb thing you got to do. But then once you realize what's at risk, it's like, oh, wow. Okay. So what we would do at Cyber Intel training and then in Singapore, we have a lot of activity in Southeast Asia, but the companies will call us in and actually get us to go educate their companies and partners they work with so they're safe. But we'll come in and do a 4 hour, it's 2 days, but it's just half days and it's 4 hours at a time. And myself and our lead instructor and educator who creates curriculum, we both do, but he's really great for longer. We'll come in and tag team it and he'll do practical cyber framework for the first day. And then I take and expand on that with AI within the bounds of that. And what we'll do is help guide people through the practical cyber framework, which helps you map identities and applications, devices, data, and networks. Those are business terms. Right. There's a lot of other jargon behind it, but as long as you can grasp that and know your role, you can map out what you're responsible for, how much it's worth in annual or like whatever you average the monthly, how much would it cost you if this website went down, what would suffer. It's not an infinite list, people. All right. And if you're a big company, you're mature enough to know better and you don't need to hear this. Skip to the next page, turn the page, right? But to be mature and be ready for it is about being ready for business advancement. It's not about AI adoption. It's about business advancement.
Right.
It's
And having
about
that proactive
yeah.
mindset.
You know what I mean? And so procedural logic's been around a long time. Think about all the Trojans and worms that have been around that rewrite themselves and adapt. That's not even AI. We never called it AI. We called it a Trojan. And it's
Right.
just like we never even called it simulated intelligence. Hell, transformer architecture is just a guessing machine. And it'll answer you different every time, almost just like a person, depending on what time of day it is. All right. Because certain neural networks are awake or not. And
Right. Right.
it's a bigger, deeper story I could go into for neuroscience. But like that's it. So cyberinteltraining.com. I'm Dan Wilson at cyberinteltraining.com. And should you need that type of cybersecurity training, we come in and we teach the C-suite and the leaders. We'll do up to 15 people at a time in these groups. And then a lot of people will hire us, will ask us to help them prepare for audits or getting ready to market go-to-market strategies for your products and making sure everything is sane for your governance. I provide a lot of assurance in what I do at infoscience.ai, founded here in Seattle. As you can see behind me, I literally am downtown. That's crazy down here. But the whole approach is to know that there's rational education out there. There's not like a million certificates. Dude, there's nowhere to start almost. I have a great friend that works, Mike Spaeth at the United States AI Institute, and they create some wonderful, and for years have created wonderful certifications for the general competency and, being fluid in AI, whether you're a manager, or you're going to be, dealing with data and other ends. They're generalized into a focus. Okay. Like it's general, but it's not like, hey, learn this for that. Go take a Coursera course. What do you tell your company? If you're the leader and a manager and you do some Googling, you're like, well, all these people, like Google does some good certs. Should I require certification? No. Like the people that require certifications are the people hiring people a lot of times. So unless you really need it as a standard, like, ISO standards, like really just think about the overall education that we're talking about today. The perspective shift has to happen where you go, this is a tool that has limitations because it's a guessing machine. It has a lot of fallibility and people are treating it like it's the magic bullet when it's actually the magic bullet that sinks your ship if you do not do it right. Okay. And so your own maturity comes into play where you're like, okay, all right. So I'm going to ask my company instead of telling them what tools have you guys been using? What worked for you? Why? Like as a manager, you ought to be really excited about anyone getting their job done better. And it's not a cheat, but at a certain point, you're going to wonder how accurate something is. There is some training into doing this. It does sound like it knows what it's talking about. It's a very convincing guessing machine. And you need to remember that every step of the way. It's the platforms and systems around the large language model that provide all the intelligence that you experience when you go into a platform like OpenAI, Claude, Gemini, what have you. And when you do that web searching and deep research and Canvas and the ability to create these things for you, like that's an extension of other scripts and other sandboxes where the AI can do some JSON interchange, package your statement into some numbers and a formula, give that to an actual Python script that it wrote solve that and provide you with actual returned values versus a guess. So this is the key. And so that's why I say narrow the scope of where you put wherever you're going to insert AI. You want it as a laser beam as you can. It's really going to be about like this though, at best, because it is guessing, but you can achieve this. You can lower the temperature on the models. You can do a lot of things as a developer. Talk to either one of us, we know. But that's my approach, man. Like if you're a manager, like understand that you have pain points in your company that you could just look at and go, I wish we could fix these problems. I wonder if some level of automation could do it. Heck, I've heard of companies, I really don't like this kind of hardline policy. They're like, we're going to fire everybody, which is a crappy way to start anything. But if you can't describe and create workflows for what you're doing, we got to let you go because they ultimately want to get someone who's trained in a position to manage and, like I said, be a steward of these AI agents.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
workflow, you'll see a lot of things like N8N, and there's some other things, but it's a website and it lets you drag little shapes on like Figma or Miro. But what it is a workflow generator. Like connect this data to this chat agent, and I want it to automatically put reports out or automatically do this cron job. Like every day at this time, fetch the newest cyber intelligence threats, right? Whatever you can find out there. What's a cyber breach that's going on? And then I want you to package this into a neat report for me and send it to me as an email. I want you to do it every day. So I can get the cyber news delivered to me every day if I want, right? Real simple and easy. But forget about that. That's whimsical. But if you do the same thing for other data and then you have it packaged again, like downstream, not just a simple email, but all of your reports are ready. Here's the folder, and that's the email. You've saved all this time. And maybe while it's processing, you're doing something else, maybe talking to people and ensuring the quality. Don't get caught into the old thinking. Again, we can replace people with AI, No, if you're making a mistake, it's not mature enough anyway. That's just dumb. And I'm sorry to tell you. Again, giving everybody the tooling. If you have 10 great employees and they happen to be constructing a house and then all of a sudden they go from hand crank bores and hand screwdrivers to an electric screwdriver, you're going to want every one of them to have an electric screwdriver in every damn bit in the garage. Okay. And you know it and I know it, but the mentality isn't as clear. That visual is not as clear. Okay. And so what you really want to empower your workforce within safe guardrails, within systems that are going to respect your policies and find out what works for them as individuals. And then maybe a company-wide adoption of that would be, oh, there's our first pilot. Everybody gets to use this knowledge server that we built. This is what I do for people is I built bespoke open source, easy to maintain knowledge servers that do this with compute and then make it something where no one's being forced to use it. It's actually really inviting because it's usable. It's like, oh, we love some software until it gets changed and I don't know where anything is. And hello, Microsoft Windows, right? Or Photoshop, Adobe is great. And I love them. And they've kept the same, pretty much workflows over time, over 20 something years that I've used them. Right. So I have a lot of respect for upgrades and changes. I want what's new. I'm a futurist to some degree. I care about the future, but right now I care more because we can do anything. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that angle, I'm curious, how do you personally view MCPs and like the growing conversation around that? I mean, it seems kind of almost an alternate take relative to if you have a true design workflow and systematic approach. So just curious.
It's like the future is being painted as an extensible one, but not a secure one when you put the MCP first. Model Context Protocol is awesome. It was developed last year in November by Claude Anthropic. It's like a USB stick for data sources for an AI to plug into. And it has like a manifest of how to use the tools with it. Here's the variables. Hey, I have an MCP tool that talks to a spreadsheet and it will accept name, address line 2, city, state, zip. That's all we're going to do for the example here, right? And the MCP tool has that. And so the AI knows that if you talk about something, it can actually put all that together and package it in a JSON, which is just JavaScript object notation. It's a text file basically with a JSON on the end instead of text, and send that query to the API, to the MCP, and then get that returned value and then use that to generate the response. Okay, here you go. Here's your value. Or if you set your system up to just print it with no response from the AI, just print that to screen. If you want to keep it in the context of the AI, there's another way to do it. But I can do whatever you want, man. It's crazy. But you've got choices to make that are actually going to be governed by your software stack, and what you have. And so, but MCP is like it's like it's a utopia. All these tools can work together. Cool, man. You nerds in computer club need to stay on the playground in the sandbox while I'm over here with money. and people's lives at stake and identities and liabilities everywhere. I don't want I don't want a toy to be called a tool. All right. It needs to be qualified and graduated. And again, that narrow scope of use, where it's being used needs to be very specifically controlled. And, if something happens, there's ways of mitigating that on the way out. So checking things on the way out is a good thing too. But MCP is promising, but a lot of the tool servers themselves, they get poisoned. So you're left to trust some random tool server. Even if you go to like huggingface.com and you want to download an open model, some people put poisoned models on, and even before MCP existed, So there's a lot of ways you can do stuff. But the problem is all of a sudden your data is getting out, so there's data exposure. MCP server is a virtual dodecahedron of attack surfaces, right? So, I could go on. There's so many like crazy things you can pull off. I know more about making money breaking it. Okay. That's how obvious there's so many more obvious ways to get in this crappy car than there is to protect it right now. And so one of my ways, and I'll just tell people out there, because this is how I think, you can do a secure shell tunnel to another machine and have the MCP server only accept requests from the local host. And then on the remote machine, what you've done is bind the ports to whatever your tool does, shows up on this machine as if it's on the local host, so no external connections can get to it. And that's one way. There's encrypted ways. Everybody's rolling their own secure ways of doing it, and it's all about your bespoke situation, I would suppose. But there is a bigger right way to do it.
Right.
And has not matured there. Look how long it took the web. Look, email, an @ symbol. It's like a circle with an A around it. You can see old news reels of people in the 90s talking about, what is email, Haha, and they were laughing. This won't last. Internet won't last. It took a long time for it to mature, but like I've never seen anything like generative AI mature gain traction so quickly and become so usable and so imminently so that we see the economy doing things largely. But also, like, even a sub part of it, like MCP, a standard, just got adopted by Google pretty quick, and now everybody supports it. Olama, well, actually not completely yet, but you can through Open Web UI. But Gemini has MCP, OpenAI. None of them invented it, and there's some of the top foundational models out there, right? So be careful. Believe the cutting edge is called that for a reason. You don't want to bleed. You want to stay behind that edge. Well, look at how Japan's played it out in business. They don't do all kind of crazy AI, implementation and adoption. They watch other people. They sit back. They're a very technologically mature country, and in business, and they make a prudent move to watch everybody else do it. And then only now this year have I seen efforts, and some of their greatest efforts have actually been in quantum computation in the
Sure.
actual amazing. I have a friend who's connected to a lab over there, and he tells me what they all do. And so I'm very close to the technology of a lot of these things. And in security, we have post quantum and stuff. But anyway, I know I ramble, but MCP has a lot of caveats, and it's worth talking about. Okay. And it's cool. It's a tool. And I have a lot of hope for it. And I hate to be hey, I work at an AI company and I'm preaching against AI. Yo,
We have to have the
reality,
authentic conversation.
let's be real. It isn't
Yeah.
made for it. Look, I'll tell you guys something really powerful. Okay. You do your best to bring the AI to your data and run on-prem. All right. For best results, for performance and all kind of other reasons. All right. Just think about that for a while. But one of the cool tips I heard is stop using secure shell. It's one less thing. So what these people have done, and I think I listened to this on a Python podcast called Talk Python to Me or somewhere else. They're making these servers where they use secured APIs, and you can only make particular API calls that are encrypted to the machine, and there's no SSH to try to take over. There's no known, you know what I mean? There's less attack surfaces. And
Yeah.
they said that was such a big deal. And I can't name them because I don't remember. Sorry, I listen to every podcast in the world every week to try to stay current and then have my own show. And that, I do everything I can, but these guys are great. And I really, I trust them. I zero trust them. Actually, I know for a fact let's put it like this. All of the foundational providers for all the models out there are all using Python. Is the most used software right now for all AI. JavaScript right under that. SQL will always be a need, but there's a few other languages too, TypeScript people want in the interim, but like for what it's worth, but hey, guess what? You need your C++ guys in there too. Dust them
Right.
off, because guess what? Python memory is not protected. Okay. So you either have to run that behind a Lambda server, make your own, which you can do. It's open source. Or you could do the API thing I was talking about. You've got a lot of options. Don't forget, the beauty of the Wild Wild West is you can invent something for yourself that works that maybe no one could ever do for you. But don't bet on it. right? You need to to be that confident, you need to be in touch with your data and the
Yeah.
text. But I have high hopes for MCP, and I'd love to see it become more secure. I just don't like it. It's like being in middle school and just kinda making out with whoever passes by, it's just bad
Right.
business, and there's no real provenance record of what's going on. There's no real terms of use, and there's a lot of stipulations out there. I'm in a group with Doc Searles, and he talks a lot about intention economy and the provenance of this and that with data, and we're involved with a lot of people. I talk to a lot of great minds on these subjects, and no one has a clear answer, so it's really good to take a step back, breathe, look at what's going on. It's a circus. There's some big elephants in the room for sure. But there's a lot of jugglers too, and they're getting stuff done. So pay attention to everything, but don't let it hype you out. Like just be like, look at all the opportunity. This is crazy. There's a lot of good actors and bad actors in all this. Cool, no problem. What are my needs? Forget all those. What are my needs? Understand my company. Get basic with this. Break out a pen and paper. You'd be surprised at how well you can map out what you actually already have if you think about it. And that's all I can give on that. I think.
No, but I think it's a perfect segue. What's the best way that if folks have an interest in this and discussing it further with you or your groups, what's the best way to contact?
If you want to contact me, you can reach out to Dan at infoscience.ai and then just tell him who sent you here. Say, Steven sent me. I don't want to talk about being sensible and safe about AI or cybersecurity. And I work with lots of, I work alongside many companies and we're all in the same boat. I want every consultant out there to succeed. We are not really our competition unless you're making it like that. But the better everybody acts and the better we all play, the cleaner the world is. Look, if you live in a bad neighborhood, people have to watch out for each other, right? Sometimes a bad neighborhood isn't as obvious. It's a beautiful street. No one would have ever thought of XYZ at this place. You know what I mean? No one would have ever thought some stranger would come in. You just never know when a non-stand outliers make a difference. Don't act like they can't happen, okay? But the cultural shift needs to happen right now, which is security mindfulness. The internet is a street, it is a city. You're in the biggest city ever every time you're on the internet. There is no greater city that I know of on this planet than the internet itself, okay? And they used to use the word a long time ago, netizen. What was that? Early 2000 or something?
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, but still, it remains true that you have to watch out for people. So the more people know about this, it's a good seed to spread, man. I want everybody to succeed. There are so many projects out there. I would be greedy and egotistical and full of hubris to think I could get it all. And I'd have to be an absolute psycho to want that. Like, where are my values? My values are with like eating food I grew possibly and like not having to fight through technology to have a good date. I want to
Right.
unplug,
Right.
I help people, in different ways and reach out. So put your brain first and get your heart out of the way when it comes to the hype because there's a lot of exciting things. But just go, let me just make sure I'm in accord with my own needs and let's see about this AI thing. Right.
Yeah.
Some people, they're so far down the road, they just need to stop and assess the security. And so if you are a security specialist wanting to upskill in AI, you can reach out to cyberinteltraining.com. That's Dan Wilson at cyberinteltraining.com. And for the AI end of things, for assurance projects and everything to do with science in AI and data science, especially, Dan at infoscience.ai, and I'll do my best to get back to you. And we're always working to protect everybody, no matter what we're doing. So be it cyber or AI. So that's that.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate you sharing the insights on governance, design thinking, and just the general, really tailored approach to even how to approach AI in business. So this has been great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It was great to meet you the other day and have such a long conversation with another like mind as yourself. So I refer people to you as well. I think you should turn to Stephen. He's got a great head on his shoulders for any projects coming up. And we've got a lot of work ahead of us. It's going to be an exciting start to next year. This is the year of agents has begun, and it's going to be like this for a good while too. So workflows, security first, the AI RMF, okay? Get in with those things and then find where the decision tree forks for you and your needs, and you'll be a lot safer because of it.
Excellent insight. I
All right.
appreciate it, Dan.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen. You have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again soon.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Talk to you soon.